7m plus 43 equals 160. What is the value of m? So first I'm going to rewrite my equation. 7m plus 43 equals 160. We want to know what number multiplied times 7 with 43 added to that would give us 160. And we could guess and check numbers until we found a number that would satisfy this equation. But there's a much easier and more direct way. And that is to undo the operations that are done to our variable m. We're going to start by undoing the addition of 43. So we're going to subtract 43 from both sides. And as long as we do that to both sides, we keep our equation equal and balanced. If you have something that's equal to something else, and you take away the same amount from both of those things, then they'll still be equal to each other. So we bring down the 7m. Positive 43 minus 43 is 0, so those cancel. And we bring down the equals, and then we have to subtract. And I can't take 3 from 0, so I'll borrow from the 6, that's a 5. Then I have 10 minus 3 is 7, 5 minus 4 is 1, and I bring down my 1 because 1 minus 0 is 1, so 117. Now I have to undo this 7 times m, and the opposite of multiplying times 7 is dividing by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1, and 1 times m is m. 117 divided by 7, I'm not sure what that is, so I'm going to divide off to the side. 7 goes into 11 one time. 7 times 1 is 7. When you subtract, you get 4. And then we bring down the 7. 7 goes into 47 6 times. 7 times 6 is 42. We subtract and we get 5. Then we add a decimal and a 0 and bring it down. 7 goes into 50 7 times. 7 times 7 is 49. We subtract and we get 1. We add a 0 and bring it down. 7 goes into 10 one time. 7 times 1 is 7. We subtract and we get 3. And we could keep going. But really, that's all I need to find my answer. The 1 tells the 7 to stay the same if we're rounding to the tenths place. So our answer is 16 and 7/10, which is answer choice B. Simplify the following expression. The quantity 2x minus 20 times the quantity 5x plus 10. To multiply these two binomials, we can use a method called FOIL. And FOIL stands for first, O stands for outer, I stands for inner, and L stands for last. So the F first means to multiply the first term in the first binomial times the first term in the second binomial. First times first. 2x times 5x. 2 times 5 is 10. And x times x is x squared. So it's 10x squared. The O again stands for outer. So that means to multiply the two outside terms. So 2x and 10 are the two terms on the outside, the outer terms. So 2x times 10, 2 times 10 is 20, 2x times 10 is 20x. I stands for inner. That means to multiply the two terms on the inside. So that would be this negative 20 times 5x. Negative 20 times 5x. A negative times a positive is a negative. 20 times 5x is 100x. Then finally, we multiplied the last terms together. So that means the last term in the first set of parentheses or in the first binomial times the last term in the second binomial. Last times last. So that's negative 20 times 10, which is negative 200. A negative times a positive is a negative. We're almost done. The last thing we need to do is combine these like terms right here. 20x and negative 100x. So it's really 20x minus 100x. Bring down the 10x squared first. And 20x minus 100x would be negative 80x. Then bring down the negative 200. So looking at our answer choices, looks like answer A would be the correct answer. If W equals 7, calculate the value of the following expression. 8W squared minus 12W plus the quantity of 4W minus 5 plus 6. In order to simplify, the first thing we need to do is substitute 7 for W. So we start by bringing down the 8. We're going to replace W with 7, so it's 8 times 7 squared minus 12. Again, replace W with 7, so times 7 plus, bring down the parentheses, 4 times W, or times 7, minus 5, plus 6. In order to simplify this, we must follow the order of operations, or PEMDAS. We start with parentheses, then exponents, then we multiply and divide from left to right, and finally we add and subtract from left to right. So that means we need to start with anything inside parentheses. So here we have a couple of different operations inside our parentheses. We have multiplication and subtraction. Well, again, if we consult PEMDAS, we can see that we're supposed to always multiply and divide before we add and subtract. So that means we're starting with 4 times 7. So you'll just copy everything else. The 8 times 7 squared minus 12 times 7 plus, bring down the parentheses. Finally, we get to 4 times 7, 28, minus 5, and bring down the plus 6. So we haven't finished simplifying what's in our parentheses, and that's what we'll do now. 28 minus 5. So bring down the 8 times 7 squared minus 12 times 7 plus 28 minus 5 is 23 plus 6. Now if we go back to PEMDAS, after parentheses, which we have no more of, we then simplify any exponents. And we do have exponents right here, 7 squared. So that's what we'll do next. 8 times 7 squared means 7 times 7, and that's 49. Minus 12 times 7 plus 23 plus 6. Okay, after exponents is our multiplication and division from left to right. So first we see 8 times 49. And we can just go off to the side and multiply that. 49 times 8. 8 times 9 is 72, so write the 2 and carry the 7. 8 times 4 is 32. 32 plus 7 is 392. So we have 392 minus 12 times 7 plus 23 plus 6. We need to continue multiplying and dividing from left to right. So next I see 12 times 7. So we'll multiply that. 12 times 7. 7 times 2 is 14. Write the 4, carry the 1. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8. So that's 84. Bring down the 392 minus 84 plus 23 plus 6. So all we have left now is our addition and subtraction from left to right. So we start with 392 minus 84. I'll do that over here. So we have to borrow from the 9, it becomes an 8. We have 12 here. 12 minus 4 is 8. 8 minus 8 is 0, and we bring down the 3. So we have 308 plus 23 plus 6. So that means we need to add 23 to our 308. That's the next thing we're going to do. 8 plus 3 is 11. Carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. And bring your 3 down. So we have 331 plus 6. And that's the last thing we're going to do is add 6 to 331. So we get 733. Our final answer is 337, which is answer choice C. Which of the following lines is parallel to the line y equals 3x minus 12? This equation is in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, where the m is the slope of the line. The slope of our line is 3, and b is the y-intercept of the line, and our y-intercept is negative 12. Now for lines to be parallel, they must have the same slope, but different y-intercepts. So we're looking for a line that has a slope of 3, but does not have a y-intercept of negative 12. So maybe we just put a slash, that equal sign. We do not want a y-intercept that equals negative 12. Let's look at b first, because b is in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. As you can see, our m, negative 1/3, is not the same as our m from our original line. And again, m stands for slope, and our slopes have to be equal for our lines to be parallel. Since this slope is negative 1/3, it is not parallel to our line. So we've already eliminated one answer choice. Now let's look at C. This equation is not in slope-intercept form. It's in standard form, which is, well, close to standard form. It's by minus ax equals c. And since it's not in slope-intercept form, we do not know the slope of this line. But we can find the slope of this line by transforming it. The first thing we need to do is add 36x to both sides. So we bring down our 12y. Our negative 36x and our positive 36x cancels. We bring down our equals. These are not like terms, so we can't combine them. We just write them down. So positive 36x minus 144. Finally, we need to divide by 12 to solve for y. 12 divided by 12 is 1, times y is y, equals 36x divided by 12 is 3x, and negative 144 divided by 12 is negative 12. Now this looks familiar. It's in fact the exact same equation as our original line. Great, then it's parallel, right? No, they're the same line, so they can't be parallel to each other because parallel lines never intersect. But these lines are going to intersect each other an infinite number of times because they're the same line. They have the same slope and the same y-intercept. So this is also not our line that's parallel to our original line. Now let's look at D. Again, it's not in slope-intercept form. So we have to solve for y in order to find out what our slope and y-intercept is. So we want to subtract 3x from both sides and subtract 12 from both sides. So we have y, positive 3x, negative 3x cancels, positive 12, negative 12 cancels, equals negative 3x minus 12. So first we look at our slopes. The slope of this line is negative 3, which is not the same as the slope of our line, which means they're not parallel. So it doesn't even matter what our y-intercept is. We know D is not our answer. Well, we're down to our last choice, so hopefully A is going to be parallel. Again, it's not in slope-intercept form, so we have to transform. We need to solve for y by first adding 9x to both sides. So we have 3y, negative 9x plus 9x cancels, equals, these are not like terms, so we can't add them together. We just write them down, 9x minus 12. And finally, to solve for y, we need to divide everything by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times y is y, equals 9x divided by 3 is 3x, and negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. So now we found a line that has the same slope as our line, but a different y-intercept. This one's negative 4 instead of negative 12. So we found our parallel line. If x minus 9 equals 2x plus 10, what is the value of x? To solve for x, the first thing we need to do is get all of our x terms on the same side of the equal sign. And we can do that two different ways. One is we could subtract x from both sides, which would eliminate x from the left side. Or we could subtract 2x from both sides, which would eliminate 2x from the right side. I prefer subtracting x from both sides. X minus x is 0. They cancel because they're additive inverses of each other. So on the left side, we're left with negative 9. We bring down our equal sign. Then we have 2x minus x, which gives us simply x. Sometimes people think that 2x minus x would be 2. But you have to think about what you're really doing. I always like to relate things to money. So if you had $2 and I took away $1 from you, then you would still have $1 left. That dollar wouldn't magically turn into something else. It's still $1. So 2x minus x, we still have an x left, plus 10. To get x by itself, we need to get rid of this plus 10. So the opposite of adding 10 is subtracting 10. So subtract 10 from both sides. Negative 9 and negative 10 is negative 19. Bring down the equal sign, and we have our x. Plus 10 and a negative 10 cancels. They're additive inverses of each other. So we get that x equals negative 19, or A. If a rectangle has a length of 5 centimeters and a width of 7 centimeters, what is its area? We're finding the area of a rectangle. The formula for area of a rectangle is area equals the length times the width. And we were given the length, 5 centimeters, and we were given the width, 7 centimeters. So all we have to do is substitute and solve. The area is, length is 5 centimeters, times the width, which is 7 centimeters. So the area is 5 times 7 is 35. Centimeters times centimeters is centimeters squared. So the area is 35 centimeters squared, which is answer choice B. Simplify the following expression. The square root of 3 times the quantity 5 square roots of 3 minus the square root of 12 plus the square root of 10. Since there is no operator between the square root of 3 and the parentheses, like there's no addition sign or subtraction sign or division sign, it's understood to be multiplication. So I'm multiplying the square root of 3 times all of these terms inside my parentheses, which means we're going to use the distributive property. So I'll start by multiplying the square root of 3 times 5 square roots of 3. So that's 5 times, and then the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which is 3. So that's 5 times 3. The square root of 3 times the negative square root of 12 is the negative square root of, and you just multiply your numbers under the square root. So 3 times 12 is 36. And then the square root of 3 times the square root of 10. So again, we're just multiplying our numbers under the radical. 3 times 10 is 30, so the square root of 30. But we're not finished yet because we have some simplifying that we can do. 5 times 3 is 15 minus the square root of 36 is 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. Plus, now 30. You want to break down that number and see if there is any part of it that we can take the square root of. So to break it down, you can just do a factor tree. 30 is 3 times 10. 3 is prime. And 10 is 2 times 5. And those are both prime. So I have no pairs of numbers and no perfect square factors. So I can't take the square root of any part of 30. So it has to be left as just the square root of 30. And finally, we can subtract 15 minus 6, since those are like terms, and we get 9. So 9 plus the square root of 30. So our answer is A. Simplify the following expression. 2x to the 4th, y to the 7th, m squared, z, times 5x squared, y cubed, m to the 8th. I'm going to start by multiplying my like terms together. So I can rewrite this. It's multiplication, so you can multiply in any order you want. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 5 together. And then I've got this x to the 4th times the x squared. And then we have y to the 7th times y cubed. And then we have m squared times m to the 8th. And then finally we just have this z, so times z. And now we'll simplify each one of these. So 2 times 5 is 10. And so right now you could already eliminate answer choice B because we're multiplying. We're not adding 2 and 5 together, we're multiplying. And then we get to our x's, x to the 4th times x squared. And what that really is, x to the 4th means x times itself 4 times, while x squared means x times itself 2 times. So when we multiply x to the 4th times x squared, we're multiplying x times itself a total of 6 times. So it's x to the 6th. You can see what we end up doing is adding those exponents together. And it's the same thing with y to the 7th times y cubed. Let's look at that one a little differently. So y to the 7th times y cubed. Y to the 7th is y times itself 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times y cubed. So times 1, 2, 3. So what we end up with is y times itself a total of 10 times. So y to the 7th times y cubed is y to the 10th. Or again, we're adding those exponents. Then we have m squared times m to the 8th. So same concept. Again, we're going to add our exponents. And we get m to the 10th. And then finally, times z. So that means our answer is D. 10, x to the 6th, y to the 10th, m to the 10th, z. Simplify the following expression. 64x to the 4th plus 8x cubed minus 4x squared plus 16x, all divided by 8x. So really what we have here is 4 separate fractions. I'm going to break this up. 64x to the 4th divided by 8x plus 8x cubed divided by 8x minus 4x squared divided by 8x plus 16x divided by 8x. Every single term is divided by 8x. So now we can take each one of these individually and divide by 8x. 64 divided by 8 is 8. And x to the 4th divided by x, well, let's see what that looks like. X to the 4th divided by x is x times x times x times x times itself 4 times, x to the 4th, divided by x. X divided by x is 1, so those cancel. And what you're left with is x cubed. So x to the 4th divided by x is x cubed. Plus 8 divided by 8 is 1 times, and then we do the same thing with x cubed divided by x. So x cubed divided by x would be x times x times x divided by x. X divided by x is 1, so you're left with x times x, x squared. Minus 4 divided by 8. 4 can't really be divided by 8, but we can simplify 4/8 as 1/2. And then x squared divided by x. You may have noticed from these 2 examples before that when we divide by x, what we're doing, or really when we divide at all, what we're doing is subtracting the exponents. So x to the 4th minus x to the 1st, or x to the 4 minus 1, x cubed. So here we have x to the 3 minus 1, x squared. So now we have x squared minus 1, or just x, plus 16 divided by 8 is 2, and x divided by x is 1. So our answer is 8x cubed plus x squared minus 1/2 x plus 2, which is answer B. Calculate the point of intersection for the following lines. 6x plus 3y equals 24, and 5y minus 10 equals 15x. There are a few different methods for finding the intersection of two lines. One is graphing. And you can just graph the two lines and find where they meet. Sometimes, though, that can be hard, especially when your answers look like this. You can also use elimination, or, like we're going to do on this problem, you can use substitution. And in order to substitute, I need to solve for one of my variables. Looking at my two equations, it looks like it's going to be pretty easy to get y alone in this second equation. And I'll do it in 2 steps. First, we add 10 to both sides. Bring down the 5y. Negative 10 plus 10 is 0. Equals, these are not like terms, so just write them down. Then we need to divide everything by the coefficient of y, which is 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, times y is y, equals 15x divided by 5 is 3x, and 10 divided by 5 is 2, so plus 2. Now that I've solved for y, I can substitute this expression, 3x plus 2, in my other equation for y. So I'm going to substitute that right there, which means that I now have 6x plus 3 times, instead of y, I'm replacing it with the expression 3x plus 2 equals 24. And now we need to solve for x by first distributing. So 6x plus 3 times 3x is 9x. 3 times 2 is 6, so plus 6 equals 24. Next, we need to combine like terms. 6x plus 9x is 15x. Plus 6 equals 24. Then, we need to subtract 6 from both sides. So 15x equals 18. And finally, we need to divide both sides by the coefficient of x, 15. That's 1 times x is x equals 18 divided by 15. We can do that right over here. 15 goes into 18 one time. That's 15. Subtract and you get 3. Add a decimal and a 0. Bring it down. And 15 goes into 30 two times. So 1 2/10. Now we're halfway there. And once you find x, it actually gets a whole lot easier to find y. Now that we know what x equals, we can use this expression, or this equation, y equals 3x plus 2, and simply substitute what x is into this equation, and we'll have y. So I'm going to replace x with 1 2/10. So y equals 1 2/10 times 3 is 3 6/10 plus 2. So y equals 5 6/10. Finally, we need to put both of these coordinates together as an ordered pair. X is 1 2/10 and y is 5 6/10, which means our answer is C. If 16x plus 4 equals 100, what is the value of x? I'm going to start by writing this problem again. So our goal is to find out what x is. That means our goal is to find out what number would make this equation true. And we could guess a bunch of numbers until we found the right answer, or we could take these 4 answers and plug them in until we found the number that would make this equation true. But we have an algebraic way to do it. And that is to start by subtracting 4 from both sides. Because since these two sides are equal to each other, to keep them equal, we have to do the same thing to both sides. So we have 16x plus 4 minus 4. Those are additive inverses of each other. That means they add to be 0, so we can cancel them out. Bring down the equal sign, and then 100 minus 4 is 96. So now we have 16 times x equals 96. The opposite of multiplying times 16 is dividing by 16. So to get x alone, we need to divide both sides by 16. That way our equation is still equal. 16 divided by 16 is 1, and 1 times x is x. And x equals, now we have to divide 96 by 16. So how many times does 16 go into 96? Well, we could always guess. I would guess 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. Carry the 3. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 3 is 96. So that means that 96 divided by 16 is 6. 96 divided by 16 then is 6. So x equals 6. Answer choice A. On a 6-sided die, each side has a number between 1 and 6. What is the probability of throwing a 3 or a 4? This die has 6 sides. That means our total is 6, which is the denominator of our fraction for finding our probability. We want to know what the probability of throwing a 3 or, and that is a key word, 3 or a 4. So if it lands on either one of those, we're good. So that's 2 different numbers that we could land on out of our 6 different numbers. And then of course we can simplify our fraction by dividing the numerator and the denominator both by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, so it's 1 in 3. Or, written like this, a 1 in 3 chance. What is the midpoint of points A, negative 28, and B, 5, 3? To find the midpoint, we can use the midpoint formula, which is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, then y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And if you look closely, you'll notice what you're doing is you're adding your endpoint x coordinates together and dividing by 2. That's an average, or the middle of those 2 numbers. So it makes sense that if you're trying to find the midpoint, that you would find the middle of your x coordinates and then also the middle of your y coordinates. And then you'll end up with a midpoint. So now I'm going to label my ordered pairs x1, y1, and x2, y2. So that now I can substitute. So my midpoint is x1 is negative 20 and x2 is 5. So negative 20 plus 5 divided by 2 And then I'll add my y's and divide by 2. So 8 plus 3 divided by 2. And now we just need to simplify. Negative 20 plus 5 is negative 15 divided by 2. And 8 plus 3 is 11 divided by 2. Negative 15 divided by 2, that's a negative, divided by a positive, that's a negative. And it's negative 7.5. And then 11 divided by 2 is positive 5.5. So that is answer choice D. If y equals 2, what is the value of the following expression? The quantity y to the 9th divided by y cubed times 2. The first thing we need to do is substitute 2 for y in our expression. So it becomes 2 to the 9th divided by 2 cubed, and that quantity times 2. And what I want to do is rewrite it. I prefer my fractions to be stacked, so I'm going to rewrite this as 2 to the 9th divided by 2 cubed times 2. When we're dividing and we have our bases the same, so in this case 2 is our base and it's the same, we simply subtract our exponents. 9 minus 3 is 6, so that's 2 to the 6th times 2. 2 to the 6th is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times itself 6 times, and then times 2. So all we have to do is multiply all these 2's. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, and then times 2. 4 times 4 is 16, times, and 4 times 2 is 8. So now I just need to multiply 16 times 8. 8 times 6 is 48, carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12, so it's 128. Factor the following expression. 9x squared y minus 18xy minus 27y. The first thing we need to do when factoring is to look and see if there's a GCF for our terms. So I'm going to write down our terms: 9x squared y, 18xy, and 27y. And then I'm going to factor them to see if I can find a GCF. The prime factorization of 9 is 3 times 3, and then x squared, so that's times x, and then times y. So that is the prime factorization of this term. 18 is 2 times 9, and 9 is 3 times 3, times x times y. 27 is 3 times 9, and 9 is 3 times 3, times y. Now to find the GCF, we look for what all 3 of our terms have in common. All 3 of our terms have a 3 in common. All 3 of our terms have another 3 in common. And all 3 of our terms have a y in common. So the GCF is 3 times 3 times y, 9y. Now we can factor out the GCF. So we're going to factor out a 9y from each one of our terms. 9y times x squared would be 9x squared y. 9y times negative 2x would be negative 18xy. And 9y times negative 3 would be negative 27y. Now we need to look and see if we can factor this trinomial. So bring down the 9y. And if this trinomial can be factored, we're going to factor it into two binomials. Well, I know that I'm going to have x and x as my first term in each set of parentheses, because x times x is x squared. Now the numbers that go here have to multiply to give me negative 3 and add to give me negative 2. So we need numbers that, we need the factors of negative 3 that have a sum of negative 2. Put that in parentheses. The factors of negative 3 that have a sum of negative 2. And the only factors of negative 3 that would have a sum of negative 2 would be negative 3 and positive 1. So negative 3 and positive 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3, and negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. And we can always FOIL it out to see if it does, in fact, we did factor correctly. So x times x would give us our x squared. X times 1 is 1x, minus 3x would be negative 2x, and then negative 3 times 1 would be negative 3. So this is our factored answer, which is answer choice C. If 2x plus 5x equals 3x plus x plus 30, what is the value of x? So first I'm going to combine like terms on both sides of the equal sign. On the left side, I can combine 2x plus 5x to give me 7x. Bring down this equal sign, and on the right side, we can combine 3x plus x. So 3x plus another x gives us 4x. And then bring down the plus 30. Next, we need to get all of our x terms on the same side of the equal sign. We'll do this by subtracting 4x from both sides. 7x minus 4x is 3x. Bring down the equals. 4x minus 4x cancels, they're additive inverses, and we bring down the positive 30. Finally, we need to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 1 times x is simply x. So x equals 30 divided by 3, which is 10. And that's answer choice D. A classroom contains 13 boys and 18 girls. If a student's name is chosen randomly, what is the probability it will be a girl's name? To find probability, we need to write a fraction. And that fraction will be how many girls' names there are out of how many total names there are. So since there are 18 girls, that means we have 18 girl names to choose from. Out of, now we have to add in the 13 boys to get our total. So 18 plus 13 is 31. So 18 names out of a total of 31 names are going to be girls. If we look at our answers though, our answers are not in fraction form. Our answers are all in percentage. So we need to convert our fraction into a decimal and then into a percent. So to convert our fraction into a decimal, we just divide. 18 divided by 31. 31 can't be divided into 18, but we can add a decimal and a 0. 31 does go into 180 5 times. 31 times 5 is 155. Borrow from the 8, it becomes a 7. Then we have 10 minus 5, which is 5. And 7 minus 5, which is 2. Then we add a 0 and bring it down. And 31 goes into 250 8 times. 31 times 8 is 248. We subtract and we get 2. Then you can add a 0 and bring it down. But 31 doesn't go into 20. So we get 0. Goes into 20 0 times. Now we can stop here because if you look at your answers, they don't go beyond 2 numbers. And to change our decimal into a percent, we just move our decimal 2 places to the right. So 58 hundredths is equal to 58%, which is answer C. (9x minus 3y plus 8xy minus 3). If x equals 10 and y equals negative 2, what is the value of this expression? First, we need to substitute. 9 times x, and we're replacing x with 10. So 9 times 10 minus 3 times y, and we're replacing y with negative 2. Plus 8 times x times y, so times 10 times negative 2. Minus 3. Now we need to follow our order of operations. First would be grouping symbols, but in this case there aren't any. Next would be exponents, and again we don't have any. So after that is multiplication and division, working from left to right. Starting at the left, we have 9 times 10, which is 90. Minus 3 times negative 2 plus 8 times 10 times negative 2 minus 3. Our next set of multiplication would be right here. So I'm going to bring down my 90 minus 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Plus 8 times 10 times negative 2 minus 3. Our next set of multiplication would be 8 times 10. So we have 90 minus a negative 6 plus 8 times 10 is 80 times negative 2 minus 3. Then we need to multiply 80 times negative 2. So we bring down our 90 minus negative 6 plus 80 times negative 2. A positive times a negative is a negative, so negative 160 minus 3. Now that we've taken care of all the multiplication, we're now going to work with addition and subtraction, again from left to right. So starting on the left, we're going to start with 90 minus a negative 6. Minus a negative, you can think of this like you're taking away a negative, which is the same as adding a positive, or you can add the inverse. So we have 90 plus 6, 96, plus negative 160 minus 3. Again, we've got to continue working from left to right. So next we have 96 plus negative 160. These two numbers have different signs. 96 is positive, while 160 is negative. Since they have different signs, we need to subtract them. So I'll do that off to the side. 160 minus 96. So to borrow from the 6, it becomes a 5. 10 minus 6 is 4. Now borrow from the 1, it becomes a 0. So I have 15 minus 9 is 6. So 160 minus 96 is 64. And it's going to be a negative 64 because 160, or negative 160, has a larger absolute value than 96 does. So negative 64 minus 3. And the last thing we do is subtract those numbers. So if you think about where you are in the number line, you're at way over here on the left at negative 64. And then you subtract 3, so you're moving more to the left. Your number's getting even smaller. So that's negative 67. Another way to think about it is you have 64 negatives and 3 negatives. That's a total of 67 negatives. And finally, even another way to think about it is you can change it to adding the inverse. So you have negative 64 plus negative 3. Either way, you're going to get negative 67. And that's answer A. Solve for x using the following system of equations. 3y plus 10x equals 23. 18y minus 15x equals 50. There are many different ways to solve a system of equations. One is by graphing. You would graph the two lines and then see where they intersect. The solution is the ordered pair of the intersection of those lines, because the intersection is the only ordered pair that will satisfy both equations and make them both true, since it's the only point they have in common. You can also use substitution. That's where you solve for one variable and then substitute that expression into the other equation. And then there's elimination. And that's the method we're going to use now to solve for x. Since we want to solve for x, we want to eliminate y. And eliminate means to get rid of. To get rid of y, I need to multiply this whole equation by a negative 6. Because negative 6 times 3y is negative 18y. And then when I add my two equations together, 18y and negative 18y will cancel or eliminate. Negative 6 times 10x is negative 60x. And negative 6 times 23 is negative. 6 times 20 is 120. 6 times 3 is 18, so 138. And now I need to add my two equations together. 18y and negative 18y is 0. They cancel. Negative 15x and negative 60x is negative 75x. Equals negative 138 and 50. When I add those together, I'm going to get a negative, and I can subtract off to the side here. That's 8, and 13 minus 5 is 8, so negative 88. Finally, to solve for x, we need to divide both sides by negative 75. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 75 divided by 75 is 1, times x is x. And again, a negative divided by a negative will give me a positive, and we can divide those off to the side. 75 goes into 88 one time. 75 times 1 is 75. We subtract and we get 13. Add a decimal and a 0, bring it down. 75 goes into 130 one time. 75 times 1 is 75. Subtract, and we get 55. Add a 0 and bring it down. And 75 goes into 550, I believe, 7 times. 7 times 70 is 490. 7 times 5 is 35, so that'd be 525. We subtract and we get 25. add a 0, bring it down. And we could keep on going, dividing until we find the end. But since this is multiple choice, we can already see which answer choice is correct. And that would be answer B, 1 17/100. A rectangular prism measures 12 centimeters by 3 centimeters by 9 centimeters. What is its volume? The formula for volume for a rectangular prism is volume equals length times width times height. And we were given those dimensions, length, width, and height. And really it doesn't matter which one is the length, which one's the width, and which one's the height, since we're just going to multiply those three numbers together anyway. So the volume is 12 centimeters times 3 centimeters times 9 centimeters. And it's up to you which two you choose to multiply together first. You could start with 12 times 3. 3 times 2 is 6. And 3 times 1 is 3. So 12 centimeters times 3 centimeters is 36 centimeters squared times 9 centimeters. So then you could take 36 times 9. 9 times 6 is 54. 9 times 3 is 27. Plus 5 is 32. So 36 centimeters squared times 9 centimeters is 324 centimeters cubed, which is answer choice C. (3x squared y plus y divided by 2 minus 6x). If x equals 4 and y equals 10, what is the value of the expression? First, I'm going to take our expression and copy it. Next, we need to substitute these numbers we were given for their variables. So we're going to replace our x's with 4's. So we have 3, this is 3 times x squared, so it's 3 times 4 squared, times y, which is 10, plus y divided by 2, or 10 divided by 2, minus 6 times x, and we're replacing x with 4. To simplify this expression, we need to follow the order of operations, which some people know as PEMDAS. And in PEMDAS, we do parentheses first, which we don't have here, and then exponents next. We do have exponents, so that means the first thing we'll do to simplify is find what 4 squared is. So we bring down the 3 times 4 squared is 16 times 10 plus 10 divided by 2 minus 6 times 4. So that's all of our exponents. Next in PEMDAS is to do multiplication and division from left to right. So starting on the left-hand side, we'll start with multiplying 3 times 16. And we can work that off to the side. 16 times 3, 3 times 6 is 18, so write the 8, carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So 16 times 3 is 48. So we have 48 times 10 plus 10 divided by 2 minus 6 times 4. We need to continue working our multiplication and division from left to right. So we'll next multiply 48 times 10, which is 480 plus 10 divided by 2 minus 6 times 4. We'll move past the 480 plus, and we'll move right on to division. 480 plus 10 divided by 2 is 5, minus 6 times 4. We have one more multiplication operation to take care of, 6 times 4. So we have 480 plus 5 minus 6 times 4, which is 24. Now we need to go back and consult PEMDAS. We're finished with all our multiplication and division. So we're going to do now our addition and subtraction from left to right. So that means we start with adding 480 plus 5, which gives us 485 minus 24. And 485 minus 24, can work that off to the side. 5 minus 4 is 1, 8 minus 2 is 6, and we bring down the 4, so we get 461, which is answer choice B. Simplify the following expression. 16x cubed minus 32x squared plus 8x, all divided by 4x. We need to divide each one of these terms by 4x. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite this as 3 separate fractions. And now we can simplify. 16 divided by 4 is 4. X cubed divided by x is x squared. Because when you divide, you subtract the exponents. 3 minus 1 is 2. Minus 32 divided by 4 is 8. X squared divided by x, 2 minus 1, is x to the first. Plus 8 divided by 4 is 2. And x divided by x, or x to the first divided by x to the first, 1 minus 1 is 0. Or you can just think x, or anything really, divided by itself is 1. So x divided by itself is 1, and 1 times 2 is 2. So our answer is C. If 2x squared equals negative 4x squared plus 216, what is the value of x? I'm going to start by rewriting this problem so I have a little more room to work with it. And if we're trying to solve for x, then we'll need to get all our x's together. So I'm going to add 4x squared to both sides so that way on the right-hand side, it'll cancel because I have a negative 4x squared and a positive 4x squared, and those are additive inverses. Now on the left-hand side, 2x squared plus 4x squared is 6x squared. Bring down the equal sign and bring down 216. So this is 6 times x squared. So to get rid of this 6, we do the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing. Divide both sides by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 1 times x squared is simply x squared. So those 6's cancel. And that equals, and now we can take 216 and divide it by 6. 6 does not go into 2, but it does go into 21. And 6 times 3 is 18. It goes in 3 times and we get 18. 21 minus 18 is 3. We bring down the 6. And 6 goes into 36 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. So when we subtract, we get a 0 remainder. So that means that 216 divided by 6 is 36. So now we know what x squared equals, but we still haven't found what x equals. So to get x alone, we need to do the opposite of squaring x. And the opposite of squaring is to square root. So we square root both sides. The square root of x squared is simply x. And the square root of 36 is 6. So that means that x is 6. Answer C. If x divided by 3 plus 7 equals 35, what is the value of x? I'm going to start by writing this problem. X divided by 3 plus 7 equals 35. The first thing we want to do is subtract 7 from both sides, because a positive 7 and a negative 7 are additive inverses of each other, and they cancel. So on the left side, we're left with x divided by 3. And on the right side, 35 minus 7 is 28. The opposite of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So now we need to multiply both sides by 3. If you put this 3 over 1, now you're multiplying two fractions together, and the numerator and this denominator cross cancel, and you're simply left with x divided by 1, which is just x. So now if we determine what 28 times 3 is, we'll have our answer. 3 times 8 is 24, so write the 4 and carry the 2. And 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So that means that x is 84, which is answer C. What is the value of x? In x squared plus 12x plus 36 equals 0. We need to find what number we could substitute for x that would make this equation true. And there's more than one way to do this. One way would be to use the quadratic equation, which is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. And the a, b, and c, those are just the coefficients of your, a is the coefficient of your x squared term, b is the coefficient of your x term, and the c is your constant. But there is another way to solve this that may even be a little bit easier than using the quadratic equation, and that is to factor. So I'm going to factor this trinomial into a binomial times a binomial. I know that x times x is x squared. What I need to find out is what my second numbers are in each set of parentheses. And these two numbers need to have a product of 36 and a sum of 12. And the only two numbers that have a product of 36 and a sum of 12 are 6 and 6. And you can always FOIL what you factored to check and see if it is in fact correct. So you could multiply x times x, and that's x squared. That's your first terms. Outer x times 6, 6x. Inner 6 times x, 6x. And last 6 times 6, 36. Then you combine like terms, x squared plus 12x plus 36. And we can see that we did factor correctly, because whenever I FOILed my binomials back out, I got what I started with. So now what we have is that some number times another number is 0. And the only way you can multiply numbers together and get 0 is if at least one of your numbers is 0. That means that either this number, x plus 6, has to be 0, or this number, x plus 6, has to be 0. And now we just need to solve our equations. To solve for x, we need to subtract 6 from both sides. So we have x equals -6. Or, again, to solve for x, we need to subtract 6 from both sides. So we have x equals -6. That means that x is either -6 or it's -6. And you can substitute that solution back in for x and check to see that it really does work. So that's -6 squared plus 12 times -6 plus 36. And what I want to know is, does that equal 0? -6 squared and -6 times a -6 is 36. Plus 12 times -6 is -72. Plus 36. And again, I want to know if that equals 0. 36 and 36 is 72. Plus -72. And I need to know if that equals 0. 72 plus a -72 is in fact 0. 0 does equal 0. So we can see that we solved our equation correctly. We found the value of x, -6.